Welcome to Lyme Time. I'm Allie from the Tick Chicks. We are all more than Lyme disease and chronic illness, and together we stand with you to overcome and rise. I'll bring you closer to the experts in cutting-edge treatments and even a few unexpected ways of healing. I'll ask the questions you want answers to regarding Lyme disease and successful ways of getting you closer to 100%. We are in this together and will not be defined by Lyme. Today on Lyme Time, I am welcoming Gregg Kirk, who founded the Ticked Off Foundation. He founded it in 2015 when he was diagnosed with Lyme disease and co-infections in 2005. After going through years of treatment ranging from antibiotics, PICC lines, herbal medications, and alternative healing measures, Kirk was finally healed in March 2011 when he visited John of God's Casa de Dom in Inácio de Loyola, I should know this, in Abandania, Brazil. While there, Kirk experienced a major reduction of his symptoms and a spiritual awakening that inspired him to help others with the illness. And since then, Kirk has been dedicated to helping those with chronic illness through music, motivational speaking, and fundraising. In 2013, Kirk created the Ticked Off Music Fest, the only ongoing music series solely focused on Lyme disease education, awareness, and fundraising. Its focus is to go to areas where the rate of infection is high, but awareness is low. In 2015, Kirk founded the Ticked Off Foundation. I love the name of that, by the way. A Lyme support organization whose mission is to provide financial assistance and treatment support to Lyme disease patients over the age of 26 who are in crisis. The organization does this through grants, treatment discounts, and counseling in an effort to stem the tide of Lyme-related suicides. And in 2016, he co-founded the Recycle for Lyme program that enables participants to collect non-traditional recyclables, ship them to a recycling facility for free, and in turn, generate donations to the Ticked Off Foundation nonprofit organization, whose funds Lyme patients in crisis. In 2017, Kirk created and launched LymeKnowledge.com, an easy-to-understand web resource written by him and several Lyme patients and experts to help broadcast the most accurate and up-to-date information on Lyme prevention, symptoms, diagnosis, and treatments. And the list goes on and on. In 2018, he published the book, The Gratitude Curve, Using the Lessons of Chronic Illness to Reach Personal Empowerment. And the Ticked Off Foundation is basically dedicated to the prevention, awareness, and support for patients with Lyme disease and other vector-borne illnesses that have become the fastest-growing infectious disease in the United States. Their mission is to provide financial assistance and treatment support to Lyme and tick-borne disease patients over the age of 26 who are in crisis. And with all of that said, I am thrilled to welcome you, Gregg Kirk.
Hi, Allie.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Well, you know, I could, like I said, I could go on and on because you have dedicated your entire life to helping others with tick-borne illness. And I'm sure you didn't set out on this mission, Lyme disease, you heard about it and decided to jump in. No, this is a personal story about how you got here. Can you tell us a little bit about your own personal journey? And how you got to where you are now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I grew up in the Midwest. My father was transferred to the East Coast, so I lived in the Philadelphia, Delaware area for a while. Met my fiance, and we transferred to Connecticut to follow a job offer that I got, and that was in 1999. And within 2 years, I started having symptoms. I didn't know what it was. And I'm just going to shorten this part of the story because everybody who's a Lyme patient, it's your story. So did not find a tick, did not have a bullseye rash. Years later, I realized I'd been bitten by a spider. And then my symptoms started within months after that. Anyway, it took me 2 years to get diagnosed, which was, I'm in the state of Connecticut where they they came up with the name. It's from Lyme,
Oh.
Connecticut, old Lyme, Connecticut. So you would think the standard of care would be pretty good, but it wasn't. It wasn't. The Lyme test was the last thing these doctors thought to give me. So, and once I was diagnosed, they put me on rounds and rounds and rounds of antibiotics, which I did not take well to. But it took me 6 years to figure out that this wasn't for me. So, I tried literally every kind of antibiotic. My doctors were treating it as one bacteria at a time, starting with just the Borrelia, and just throwing antibiotics at just that. And then, oh, wait a minute, year and a half later, maybe you have Bartonella, and tested positive, and and so on and so on. And so my system started to break down from, these treatments, these, not just the antibiotics, but the pharmaceutical treatments. My doctor prescribed Adderall when I complained of fatigue, prescribed opioids when I complained of pain. And, at that point I was just underwater with these pharmaceuticals. And I just decided I'd had enough after I got walking pneumonia that was not treatable because I was already on 4 different oral antibiotics at that point. My doctor wanted to give me a 5th. I thought something's got to give. So I started a number of different herbal treatments and finally landed on the Cowden protocol. In the meantime, you had mentioned that I was swinging for the fences here. As I was dying and I hadn't quite transitioned to the herbal treatments, I found out about a healer named John of God and flew down to Brazil. And I'll just spend a short period of time, but this was a life-changing experience. And I experienced what could best be called the healing miracle that you can come to my website, greggkirk.com, and take a look. I've got before and after pictures. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm also not here to talk about John of God, who's also, the strangest part of this is he's in jail now for molesting women. So it's a strange thing where I went down there, had a miracle happen. I've watched other people have these miracles, and yet this guy was also doing bad things on the side. Those two statements need to go together because that tells the full picture. It's not one or the other. So anyway,
I just want to interrupt for a second and say that I have had close friends go to him and had the same takeaway as you. So, I think the two things can unfortunately exist at the same time, but they had major transformations. So I just want to give you a little credit there.
I want to thank you because, I put this in my book, The Gratitude Curve, and then people read it and said, well, are you going to take those chapters out about John of God? I'm like, the chapters in my book are not about John of God. They're about my experience in Brazil, where I had multiple, healing events that cannot be explained by conventional terms. So no, I'm not going to take that out. I am writing a second book, and I'll write a chapter about exactly what we're talking about. Anyway, fast forward to me coming home, and I went through this massive spiritual thing that happened, and but I came back to a toxic lifestyle, toxic, diet, and all these other things, and I was working a corporate job that was very not good for me, and I started to backslide, and that's when I started doing the Cowden protocol, and that helped me. So it was a great balance between the spiritual stuff that I experienced with this physical stuff. So mind, body, spirit. I was learning about that, and that's more or less how I went into remission in 2012. At that point, I thought, you know what, I want to. I don't want anybody to go through what I went through. And I have a background where I used to run an entertainment magazine in Philadelphia. I used to run big events, concert events, and so forth. I thought it'll be like falling off a log for me to set up some concerts, so this will be easy. And I did. And we started the Ticked Off Music Fest and, held these big concerts starting in 2012. And the thing, and I didn't know anything about the Lyme world at that point. I just thought, all right, well, let's raise money to find a cure and raise money for awareness, like everything else, cancer and MS and whatever. But by the second event that we held, Lyme patients were coming to the events, and I didn't expect that. And they were not in good shape. They were in wheelchairs, walkers, crutches, oxygen tanks, and they were coming crying, to find out about treatment about doctors and things like that. So they went to a concert to find out about Lyme information, treatment information, and I'm it was staring me in the face, literally, people crying in my face. And I thought, there is a huge gap in treatment and patient care right now. And the treatments that worked for me are not covered by insurance. So I just kind of sat back one day and I thought, if I had $1 billion, what would I do to help Lyme patients? And I thought I would create an insurance company that covered all the treatments that the other insurance companies don't. And then I thought, wait a minute, I don't have to wait to become a billionaire. Why don't I just raise funds to do that? So the Ticked Off Foundation was launched a few years later. We're still doing events with the Music Fest, every year, at least one a year, but they're very much scaled down. And now with social media, it's just easier to do broadcasts where people, we'll hold a smaller event, but then people can watch all over the world, what we're doing. Anyway, so we kicked off the Ticked Off Foundation in 2015, and then we started giving money away. And it didn't take long before basically everybody found out about us, and we were paying people's power bills, anything. It didn't matter, and we quickly ran out of money. And so we started refining, based upon our limited resources, what to do. And one of the first things that I did was I reached out to the company that helped me get better. Nutrimetics are the company that makes the Cowden protocol. So I reached out to the CEO, and I asked him if he would be like a platinum sponsor of Ticked Off Foundation, and he said no. I'm like, why not? You're a poster child. Come on. And he said, listen, we're for profit. You're not for profit. If you say good things about our products, it's just going to look like money laundering. He said, why don't we do this? Why don't we give just your patients like a very generous discount? And he said, I like your vetting process. So people come online to tickedofffoundation.org. They fill out this form. You present proof of Lyme, proof of financial need, those two things, with some sort of documentation that is identified on the website. He said, I like that. So if basically you send us patients who you qualify, we'll trust you, and then we'll give them the special discount. So that started, pretty quickly, like in 2016. And that really became the cornerstone of how we started helping patients. We've developed a relationship with Cellcore since then, very similar situation. And, so at this point, we're not giving the money away, except for in special situations where a patient is on one of these treatments and can't stay on it. And so we're helping a range of patients. And the type of patients that we do set aside a little bit of money for are people who are in homeless shelters, domestic abuse shelters, they're living in vehicles, or, they've got some, really tough circumstances that we've identified through a phone conversation. So we do have money set aside. It's not available for, like we did before, we were like an ATM machine for Lyme patients, and that didn't last too long. So anyway, when you and I were talking a little bit earlier, Ali, I just want to tell people that some things are happening with us as of just a month ago, less than a month ago, that stay tuned, because we're forming some new relationships. And this all happened because there was a symposium, a Lyme conference called the Lyme Bites Symposium, that was held at the end of October. And the Ticked Off Foundation was identified as, the charity of focus. And so they donated some money to us, and then they identified us as, a foundation that's doing good work. And, for the audience there was mainly doctors, and then companies like compounding labs and the big testing labs and so forth. So, they asked me to go up at 7:45 the first morning of the thing. I'm usually sleeping then, and asked me to speak about what I do, and it's one of those things where I just gotten a text the day before from a Lyme patient who literally said, Greg, I just wanted you to know, you don't know this, but I'm in remission now, and I haven't said anything, but you saved my life. The Ticked Off Foundation, I'd be dead without you, literally. And I started to go into that in front of a room full of 100 people, and I started choking up because, it's overwhelming sometimes to talk about this stuff in a good way. And then as in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, oh my God, why did I do that? But then I get off the stage and all these people came to me for the rest of the conference, like, basically saying, Greg, we know your heart's in the right place. How can we help you? So some really amazing new relationships that I can't quite talk about yet. If things go as I hope, it'll transform what we're doing. We might take the age limit off on some of the things that we're doing, for instance. And the reason we have the age limit there is there's another wonderful organization called the Limelight Foundation that is very well funded, and they help patients and young kids and young adults 25 years and younger with $10,000 grants. And we don't have that kind of money, and we don't want to overlap with what they're doing. I think the world of these people. They're doing a phenomenal job. So that's why we made ours 26 and over, because nobody's really supporting the parents of these kids. So that's what's going on. But yeah, so stay tuned. We've already got some things happening. Just go to tictofffoundation.org and to see some of the new things going on. The Cowden protocol just came out 2 months ago with a new protocol. It's only 2 dosing times. That's a big deal. We've got a tighter and really great relationship with Nutramedics going right now. So anyway, it's just great. It's the best time we've had so far with the foundation, and I'm very excited about it. So
Yeah, I'm wondering if you can just backtrack a little bit for those who are not familiar with the Cowden protocol or Nutramedics or even Cellcore for that matter. Can you just give us a brief overview of what it consists of? I'm not even sure I know a lot about Nutramedics because I've interviewed Dr. Cowden and I love him and I love his protocol, and it's herbal based, it's naturally based products. And
yeah.
he is asking everybody to try it for a year because that's kind of how herbs work. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and also about Cellcore?
Yeah. So the Cowden protocol is a mostly tincture-based herbal protocol. So tincture meaning it's drops. You put drops in an empty glass and fill it with water. And then it's got a few pills to take. So if you don't like taking pills, it's a great protocol. The old protocol was 4 dosing times per day, which took some dedication, and it was 14 herbs, but they've combined things now. It's much more efficient. And whereas Dr. Cowden, was saying, stay on it for a year, now they're saying just it's a 6-month program. Everything's been, shortened. And yeah, so 2 dosing times. The herbs are more, I believe, if I understand, I think, Tim, the CEO, said to me, they've tested it for the past 5 months on about 5,000 patients behind the scenes. And people are responding quicker to this combination of herbs than the old protocol. Is just fantastic. So, that's what got me better. The nature of the herbal protocol is it gets into your system and into areas that, things like antibiotics that can typically only work in the bloodstream. The protocol goes through tissue walls, bone, all blood-brain barrier. It goes everywhere. So it's really, really effective. And so which can also create a problem. So patients who have blocked detox pathways or mold toxicity, things like that, they have a trouble getting on the Cowden protocol within the first couple of weeks. They're like, wow, I can't, I'm dying from this protocol. First, they think it's a protocol, but no, it's what the protocol is doing. It's destroying all these, the colonies of pathogens in your body. And if you've got blocked liver or kidneys or, blocked drainage pathways, you're going to have a hard time. And so for years, we didn't have much, have great answers for people who are in the Cowden protocol, other than, having them down dose and try to just take very, very minor doses to see if they could tough it out. But there was maybe 10% of the patients it was just impossible. So that's when Cellcore came in. So Cellcore is basically more of a pill-based herbal protocol, but it's for opening the drainage pathways. So it's in phases too. And there's a foundational and a comprehensive protocol. And it's phenomenal at getting your gut right. That, your gut is 70% of your immune system, as they say. A lot of people have intestinal parasites. A lot of people have mold in the intestinal tract or throughout the body. And this is extremely good at getting rid of all of those things that can be a barrier to treatment, especially, something as effective as the Cowden protocol. So those are the distinctions between those two. So that's, yeah, phenomenal. Those are, legit, probably the best herbal protocols, out there at this point. Now, the Buhner protocol is a very good one too. And the reason that we haven't really done anything with the Buhner protocol is, Dr. Buhner requires that you read his book, and then there's no standardized company that makes all the herbs. However, just recently, Nutrimetics has been making, a number of the herbs, the main herbs that are in Buhner's protocol. So there is a standardization that's starting to happen with that. So that's great. So we may we may work something out with that as well. But at this point, those are the two options that people have. The other thing is, if I'm talking like I know what I'm doing, I know what I'm talking about. I was trained by Dr. Cowden, and this was a curveball that, Tim, the CEO, threw me when we were setting this relationship up. He kept asking me, so, Dr. Cowden's going to be in your area. Do you want to be trained by him? And I'm like, no, I just want to get this thing going. I just want to help patients, like an idiot. I'm turning this down.
The
And so,
godfather of Lyme disease, the pioneer, and you're like, no, I don't think so, because
yeah,
you're wondering, how can I use that, right?
right. Well, yeah. And speaking of the Godfather, he made me an offer I couldn't refuse. Paid for my travel and hotel. He's like, why don't you go? It's going to be 15 doctors and you. I'm like, oh, great. No pressure. But it was like I took to it like a duck to water. Because for 10 years or so, I've lived the Lyme thing. I had to become a student of the illness, as you know, and I learned from my doctors the good things and the bad things. So when I spent this weekend learning how to use the Cowden protocol, it just all rang my bells, and I remembered everything. I took notes and everything, and I had dinner with Dr. Cowden later, and it was just great. And he just said one thing. He said, I know what, I hear what you're doing, starting this foundation, but I just want to make sure you don't give away the protocol or completely pay for it, because he said, I want every patient to have skin in the game. I want them to all be invested in their own treatment. So those in the healing community understand that fully well. You understand that when you give away something to somebody, in the back of their mind, subconsciously or even consciously, they don't value it as much. They won't follow they tend to not follow the directions as well, and they tend to not believe it's going to be helpful to them. So anyway, that's what we've done. We worked the same thing out with Cellcore as well, and we're working similar things out with some new treatments that are going to be revealed hopefully within the next couple months.
And just to be clear, Cellcore is also plant-based?
Yes.
Okay. And is that all strictly capsules, or is that tinctures too?
It's a combination. It's mostly capsules, whereas Cowden protocol is like, I don't know, 80% tinctures. It's kind of the other way around with Cellcore. It's 80% pills.
Yeah, yeah. And I think people that are leery, goes back to what you're saying. If it's too good to be true, then people don't really give it any credit. And I think when people have been westernized and, allopathic medicine and going down and believing about these antibiotics, and they actually do help a certain percentage of the community. But when you're banging your head against the wall and you realize, I've got a chronic condition that I cannot shake,
Right.
that's the point where you can just take a left turn and try. There's not going to be any harm in trying necessarily, God willing. And people are really astonished to learn that antibiotics, they think that's so much stronger and that's going to kill the bug. But truly, these plant-based medicines that have been around forever and have treated our ancestors for the millennia, they don't really understand how that can be as powerful, if not more powerful, than an antibiotic. Because with each of these tinctures and each of these capsules, they're making a combination of plant-derived antimicrobials, antibacterials, gut support, everything. It's not just an antibiotic trying to zoom in on one particular bad guy.
Exactly. In fact, this has kind of become the mantra of the Lyme Bite Symposium. So this is the third year they've held it. It's a bunch of doctors who that well-known doctors. They had Horowitz and Rawls and Moorcroft and Burrascano and Dr. Neil Nathan there. So all of these doctors are saying very similar things. They're saying, I started using antibiotics to help Lyme patients, and they're just not working. They're not getting patients into remission, outside of the first 60 days of infection. So if you get the tick bite, you see the bullseye rash, and you catch it in the first 60 days of infection. This is according to Dr. Cowden. Your chances of it not going chronic are very, very, very high. It's not 100%, but it's in the 90th percentile. But after that, if you start doing antibiotics, in some cases, it's like pouring gasoline on a fire. And Cowden, showed a very, very sobering slide during his presentation where he showed a spirochete and it had these buds on it that people would call cysts. And my understanding was, the cyst version of Lyme is when it curls up in a ball and goes into dormancy. And no, as I learned in high school biology, there some organisms reproduce by budding. And that's so he basically Cowden said, here, okay, here's a spirochete that has just been introduced to antibiotics. It detected it in the bloodstream like an hour before, and it has these 3 buds on it. And those are what people call cysts. But basically those are gonna, shake off of the spirochete. The spirochete will die. It'll get killed by the antibiotics, but those cysts will leave the bloodstream and go throughout the body and lodge wherever they want. And then in the meantime, this spirochete is going to form biofilms to protect itself. So he's like, look at that. It's got its own defense mechanism against antibiotics. And, then I just thought of me being on antibiotics for 6 years and what I had done. And I thought, but anyway, at the Lyme Bite Symposium, I'm talking to Dr. Rawls, and he says, let's just face it, antibiotics in the chronic phase, they just are not working. They're not the first line of, defense or whatever you want to call it. And as many of the other doctors there said, and, up in front of people, that these pharmaceuticals have side effects, but all of these herbals have side benefits. So, you get herbs that kill the Lyme, but it's also anti-inflammatory or anti-cancer, so if you're on the fence and thinking, like I was like, well, there's nothing stronger than antibiotics, but they're so limited. They're only effective in the bloodstream. And if you're scaring them away with the antibiotics and they're fleeing, you're smoking them out and they're going deeper into the system, it's like that's actually not a good thing. So good to take herbals that can go everywhere in the blood system and pass through the tissue walls and things like that and go after stuff. So
Absolutely. And I can't thank you enough for just dedicating your entire life to this, bringing awareness, and also just continuing the passion project of helping those that are in dire straits. And I have come across a few people like that, kids mostly, that not kids, but young adults, I should say, that really are, if they don't have the help of their parents and they're having disease, it's really, really sad because they're just not knowing what to do whatsoever. And I think this is a great resource. So I just want to reiterate that anybody who might know of anybody or might be involved in a domestic violence situation or a homeless situation or something where you cannot financially continue the protocols that we've talked about, Nutramedix or Cellcore, to go ahead and give this a try. Go to ticktofffoundation.org Is that right?
Yep.
And you'll find Greg's wonderful page and read all about it. And then that should take you to the link for the application. Am I right?
Yeah, there's a link up at the top that says financial assistance or financial aid, and so click on that. It has all of our rules and everything. And just to be clear, anybody can fill the form out. So people ask like, well, what's your salary threshold? We don't have that, because so we ask for two things from you. One is proof of Lyme. So just send us a Lyme test. We are not that picky. We don't. It doesn't have to be CDC positive. Just send us the Lyme test, or send us. If you don't have that, and some people can't afford to pay for a Lyme test, then just send us a doctor's note with the doctor's letterhead on it saying, you're being treated for Lyme. That's the first thing. Second thing is, if you're on any kind of government assistance, anything, just show proof of that. And even if it's, whatever, a welfare card or food stamps, that's fine too. Or failing that, just the first page of last year's tax return. And listen, so we've had people who make a decent amount of money, more than you would think, like, oh, well, they make too much to be considered for financial assistance. But we look at your extenuating circumstances. If you have 5 kids and a wife, you have all got Lyme disease and you all need to be treated, we take that into consideration. Now, I will say one person, excuse me, applied who made $250,000 without any of those extenuating circumstances, and we said, "Are you kidding me?" No. So
Right.
there's that, but down in the average range where I think a lot of Lyme patients are, and especially a lot of patients can't work anymore. So sometimes we'll take into consideration that if you're on unemployment or proof of that you've been let go of your job because of your circumstances, then we'll also look at that. It's not always the deciding factor, but we can add it to the mix. So anyway, it's not a cut and dried situation, because the whole thing is not cut and dried. I mean, and then once after you get approved, then you have to have a call with me, because we need to figure out what's the best approach for you. Whether it's Cowden protocol or if you're, here's the third thing I didn't mention. We partner with a number of doctors around the country. So if it's this if one of our approved doctors sends you to us and you're on some form of their treatment, you'll be approved for that as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. And probably many of them I've had right here on Lyme Time, so everybody probably knows who you're talking about, and and more to be considered, I'm sure, down the road. One thing I want to point out, though, to everybody, the Cowden protocol, I can speak to that. I don't know about Cellcore, but already in and of itself, even if the average person tries that and gets my discount or your discount through Ticked Off Foundation, whatever it is, that's already a step in the right direction of being affordable care, because many of them, even though it might sound like big dollars, but when you're comparing them to these expensive treatments that we all hear about, it's actually very much affordable.
I'm glad you brought that up. I see this in the Lyme groups all the time, where somebody will say, if you had $1 million, where would you fly to go for treatment? And I always say, stay home and do the Cowden protocol at a discount. That's what I did. I mean, I did fly to Brazil, but ultimately I needed something for the physical treatment, and it was the Cowden protocol that got me better, with the physical stuff. So everybody can stay home and you don't have to fly to Germany and get hyperthermia treatment. I've heard, 50%. I've heard good stories where people have gone into remission and stayed, or I've heard 50% where they didn't, or they went into remission and then out, so that's 50-50. People like Dr. Cowden and Horowitz are saying the recovery rate, like with the Cowden protocol, is in the 80th percentile. Mm-hmm. So you got, if you're a betting person, those are better odds for you than stay home, do something that might have an 80% chance of helping you versus, something that costs $20,000 to $40,000 and flip of the coin.
That's right. And I shared the same experience with you. Did I try antibiotics? Yes. By the time I got diagnosed, I was 6 years in. So then, okay, I gave it a go. I tried them for 4 months. My doctor rotated them. And unfortunately, I was the sickest I had been. I was catching colds. I was coughing the entire 4 months. I just didn't feel like well. I knew I had Lyme disease, but then I felt like uh, just unhealthy on top of it, just in terms of catching every single thing that came around. So, for my own personal experience as well was through Nutrimedics and Vital Plan, actually, Dr. Rawls. But any of these, more expensive things that I do now is really a preventative for any episodes. I don't, I want to keep my immune system as healthy as possible. So twice a year, I'll do an NAD treatment or something like that. And that's, $500. But I never did any of the super duper expensive ones either. So we share in that same experience. I'm not saying that they don't work, and I'm not saying that people aren't helped by them, but there are other ways that you can try that are very, very effective. And I'm excited about your collaboration with Cellcore, your collaboration with Nutrimedics, and TikTok Foundation is just doing some wonderful, wonderful things. And it was just an honor to meet you. I'm excited about all the things you're doing, and anybody out there, check them out. And Gregg, if you wouldn't mind, I asked Dr. Cowden to do this, and I always love when he does this, but if you could give some parting words to our listeners out there who are in bed, who are in pain, and going through what you and I both went through a few years ago.
Yeah. So everybody I talk to who comes in, they're hopeless. So they this is their last. They've tried everything. They've run out of money, and those are the people who we get, and they can't afford a doctor anymore. So I get on the phone with them, and we start talking about what's the best treatment for them. By the time they're done, they are excited. They're like, oh my God, I have hope. I haven't had hope in 8 years. I didn't know I didn't know these things were available. This is amazing. You got better. You're telling me these things and you got better, Gregg. So that gives me hope, and then I'd say about 30% of the people are like, and I want to help you after I get better, or I want to start doing something like you're doing. And that's great. It's kind of the reflex that some people have. So hope is there. It's just you just got to find the right treatment for yourself, and just don't give up. I mean, I had somebody ask me the other day. They're like, well, how did you know? And I didn't. I got to a point where I I didn't want to live. It's that whole thing where I didn't want to commit suicide, but I just didn't want to live anymore because of how bad I felt. And then, I had a really bad night where, I had a PICC line insertion. It jabbed my heart, caused a heart attack, almost killed me. And I had this moment of like near death experience where I was just like, well, all right, I'm ready to go. And I didn't die. And then when it was over, I just thought, you know what, I'm not going to give up. I do not accept that I'm not going to get better. I didn't know how it was going to get better. I could not accept that this is because, when I didn't die from that, I was like, I don't think I'm going to die here, but I'm not going to be disabled for the rest of my life. I just know it. I'm not going to, I'm a smart person, problem solver. I'm going to figure this out. And, I did. And as I say to most people, it's like I swam to the other side of the river. You don't have to take the same path as me, but I got there. I can help you. I can tell you what I did. Swim the same strokes as me if you want, but you can make it. You can do it. A lot of people are doing it. And hope is there. It's just up to you. You just got to put a little bit of effort into it. That's all you got to do. You don't have to fly to Brazil or Germany or wherever. You can stay home and do these treatments and just get better, and then be a better parent, a better husband, wife, whatever. And then, if you want to give back too, ring me up. I need some help.
Thank you. So inspiring to everybody listening out there. And I'm sure that, they're emotionally touched by your story, and also by you just giving them hope. So that's what it's all about. Gregg, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you, and I hope to talk to you again in the future.
Thank you so much, Allie. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg also is present on social media. He has, well, aside from the Ticked Off Foundation, you can find him on Instagram there. Also, he has a clinic and it's called Lyme Recovery Clinic. And they are on social media as well. And they are located in Darien, Connecticut. And so if you'd like to schedule an appointment, if you're in the area, um, look them up and find them there. One final thought, and I want to make this clear, is with anybody who qualifies for that deep, deep discount that we were talking about, and for those who are in critical need of a treatment program, this is how it breaks down. For instance, I don't know how they do cell core, but for the Cowden protocol, which is called Nutramedix, the normal cost for that is $295.95 per month. So $295.95 per month for the 6-month protocol. If you qualify and go through the application process and provide him with all the documentation that he requested, that cost out of pocket is $50 for the first month. And then months 2 through 6, it's $150 per month. And that is a basic guideline for what they're talking about. Of course, when you're having a conversation with him, you can discuss that as well. But I wanted to give you a basic guideline on exactly what's covered with that application process and how they're helping that community. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Lyme Time Podcast. If you like what you heard, please subscribe on your favorite platform to be notified of new episodes. Remember, this is not intended to be medical advice. Take your findings to your provider to see if something is right for you. No two bodies heal the same, and your doctor knows you and your labs best. You can find out more about the Tick Chicks at thetickchicks.com, and if you subscribe there, you'll be notified of upcoming events like the in-person Losing Lyme retreat that I host. I also have shopping pages dedicated to helping your at-home symptom relief, as well as a private support group. Join the Tick Chicks tribe on Instagram, YouTube, Meta, TikTok, Pinterest, and X. You are not alone.